you as a reporter and how you approached both sources and within your newsroom?
It's funny because, and you and I discussed this a little before, I think in news, being a female news reporter in an area where it's sometimes dominated by men, I didn't mind being called the B word. I mind being, you worry about being considered too nice, because then you wonder whether or not your bosses think you're actually getting the story. Like if you're, obviously there's a balance there, because you have to be cordial and professional, and one of the ways you develop sources is by being very natural with people. However, there are a couple, however, you have to be you can't be afraid to ask the tough questions. There's a real balance there. Now there is one thing though that really annoyed me, and nobody in this room is to blame for this one. But oftentimes, if I would beat somebody, Andrea and I are two.
For a story.
Yeah, for a story. Andrea and I are two of a few women that cover the legislature, and a reporter said, "Well, the only reason he talked to you is because you're pretty." I hate that. Can you just admit that I beat you? Can you just admit that maybe I worked a little harder than you did, or I had a better source or a more well-paid source? And that's happened more than once. And it bothers me to no end, because, I think that most state lawmakers would tell you that, when I was trying to do something, I would exhaust every avenue I had to get the story. I mean, I showed up one time to get the speaker at a charity golf tournament that I wasn't necessarily invited to. So I mean, it's one of those things where I hated when people would just cast aside, well, the only reason you got that is because you're female and the state legislature is dominated by men. It just drove me crazy, because you know what? I worked really hard. And I didn't use the fact that I was a woman or flirt or do any of these things that people think we do to get jobs. I didn't do any of it. So it would really, really bother me when people made accusations like that.
And Tricia, for you, in courts, what's that experience look like for you in terms of that balancing act?
I would say federal court and state courts are a little bit different. I think you don't see the issue as much in federal court just because you just don't. State courts have been a whole different animal, on the other hand. There's the Davidson County courts, and then I also travel to surrounding counties, Sumner, Cheatham, you name it. I've gotten very far away to counties I don't really quite know where they are. But it is very, very different. Most of the time when I walk in, I've been called the court reporter. Where's your machine? Oh, whose secretary are you? No, honey, that's a lawyer question. I had that said to me in Davidson County Court last week when I was like, oh, I need this continuance and this is why. Well, sweetheart, that's a lawyer's reason for continuance. Like, where's your lawyer? And I'm like, no, but I am the lawyer, and I've actually been out of law school now for 12 years. And, the fact that you're making this assumption and everything is, oh, sweetheart, and oh, honey, and you just don't really know, and, oh, sweetheart, you're just doing it wrong. To me, that's offensive. Now, I don't think that people mean it that way. I think, a lot of these clerks and the various other people that you're dealing with, I think they have good hearts, and I think they think they're helping this, what they envision is this young girl who's kind of walking in and maybe doesn't know what she's doing. There seems to be an assumption of that. I'm not quite sure why. I don't think I project some inferiority in one way or another, but they're very eager to help you and very eager to assume that I am somehow somebody's secretary or paralegal or court reporter or not the lawyer on the case. That's happened more than once. And when I was practicing in West Virginia, I showed up for a case where I was actually representing Ford Motor Company, so not at all a small client. I was the lawyer on the case, which was great. And I walked in, and all the lawyers in the room said, well, sweetheart, where's your machine? And I was like, no, actually, I'm counsel for Ford Motor Company. Who are you? But it's a very demeaning thing. And for me, and I don't know about the rest of you, and certainly, Speaker, I'm sure you haven't dealt with this in a long time, but it just kind of knocks the breath out of you for a second, that no matter how much you've accomplished, no matter how far you've gotten, no matter how packed your resume is, when you walk in and somebody just assumes that you're nothing, and that they're doing that because of your gender. And I didn't really think that that existed. I mean, for a very, very long time, I was like, oh, no, everybody's treated the same. It's no different. It's no different. Until one day I really realized that it was. I mean, I turn around and talk to some of my male colleagues. That's never happened to any of them. I mean, not once, ever. It has never been the assumption that they are a secretary or a paralegal or not the attorney on the case. As a matter of fact, when I've had male staff that have worked with me who have been the secretary or the paralegal or the court reporter, when you walk into a room, it's always assumed that they're the lawyer. I mean, and that the roles are reversed. So it's kind of jarring. It knocks the breath out of you, and then you kind of have to say, and sometimes Andrew and I have discussed this late at night, you know, wow, okay, take a deep breath, put your big girl pants on, and go in and show them you know what you're doing. But having to kind of prove that over and over again is something I hope my daughter doesn't have to do.